Our work session this evening for October 16th at 6:03 p.m. Again, the goal of this work session and all work sessions at the town board is to receive information on topics of town business from a variety of different folks who provide this information. And our number one item on the agenda this evening is the DDA is here this evening presenting the 2018 budget.
Very good.
So, maybe we should do introductions too.
Okay.
Just because I'm not sure who knows who, and so we can
Sounds
start
great.
with you.
Yeah, I'll start. My name is Matt Ashby. I'm the Executive Director of the Windsor DDA.
I'm Dan Staus, I'm the chairman of the Windsor DDA.
I'm Dean Kaler, I'm a board member, so.
Okay. Christy Melendez, and I serve as the liaison to the DDA board.
Ken Bennett, District 3.
Ivan Adams, District 6, Town Board.
Yes.
James Wagner, Director of Management, Windsor.
Patty Garcia, Town Clerk.
Ian McCarter, Town Attorney.
Terry Walker, Director of Public Works.
Kelly Hoagling, Assistant to the Town Manager. Justin Blair, Civil Engineer with the town.
Miles Baker, Mayor Pro Tem.
Sweet Showerman, District 2.
Kelly Arnold, town manager.
Fantastic. All right. Well, thank you all for taking time to hear an update from the DDA. This actually works as a tandem benefit to us because we're required through the Colorado Main Street program to have an annual update to the town. So we're actually getting double credit for your time here. So, all right, so just want to start things off with a little overview of what we've done this year, what we've been up to, and
Thank you, sir.
and then kind of lead into what we're looking at for the coming year. So exciting news, we've had 6 new businesses open in the DDA district over the course of at least the first part of this year. So certainly good to see new businesses filling in spaces that were vacated. I know that was a topic of conversation at one of our earlier meetings. Folks were concerned about, oh no, Nana Bees is closing, oh no, the doll shop's closing, what's going on? And fortunately, just a couple months later, we've got vibrant businesses in those locations. So this is what we want to see. This is one of the key things that we're geared towards is filling spaces with businesses. So good to see that that is happening. So in 2017, so far at a glance, we've done a lot of activity on what we call the backlot area. So a number of different activities, starting off the year with a strategic plan for the American Legion. We worked with them with DDA funds to basically walk through some different scenarios of where they might move, where they might stay, how much it might cost to rehabilitate the existing structure, and kind of give them some food for thought for the future. Another item was the Birch property being put under contract. With that, we completed several environmental studies, survey, appraisal, and ultimately that property was left to expire. That contract was left to expire. But we do have hope to have that conversation again with the DDA board very soon. One of the main concerns on that property was the environmental studies that came back, and we pursued looking into further information on the environmental issues, and were able to actually apply for some EPA grants to basically do additional environmental studies of that property, as well as a phase 2 environmental on the DDA lot and a phase 1 starting on the town's lot, the former public works property.
What was it again that they found on the Birch property?
So there's some fertilizer remnants, pentachloroethylene, I think is the technical.
Didn't mean to trip you up there, man.
Yeah, good question. So that was of concern enough that, you know, the DDA board said, how do we find out what that really means? And so that was kind of the stage where the property fell out of contract, and basically we figured out how to move forward in addressing that issue with grant funds to figure out how extensive is it and what's it going to cost to clean up. And so those are the questions that are currently before us. in working with the state, Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment, to figure out what the resolution is.
Okay.
Additionally, the developer request for proposal, which resulted in the selection of Brinkman to be the master developer for the area. And basically that was a pretty extensive process as well, reviewing I believe three proposals were ultimately submitted, and interviews, so pretty intensive process, and then getting to the point just a few weeks ago where the memorandum of understanding letter of intent with Brinkman was completed. So we are kicking off that process, and we'll start that sort of design and visioning phase with public engagement and outreach, and working on creating a vision for this property. And then finally, work on the area of unknown ownership. So that would be the alley area between the Main Street buildings and the DDA lot. So figuring out the title issues associated with that. And we anticipate that with Ian's help, that'll be moving forward here soon as well. So lots of legwork, lots of kind of behind the scenes activity to get us to a point where we can start creating a vision and looking at some development options. Yes, sir.
Matt, before you go on, back to the state, what kind of answers are you getting from them as far as answers and?
Yeah, so we're working with them. They actually have a process that we're interested in that would give us a letter that says what is the concern with the property and what we can do to move forward with development. So far they've been pretty responsive, and we've got the environmental consultant that we've hired, as well as the EPA and the state all talking together. So things appear to be on a good track.
Sorry, are they giving you months? How many months they'll be back to you?
Yes, we've got a pretty good timeline. EPA and their contractor is actually the slow one. But essentially we've got three different elements of the study going forward at the same time. So we're not losing a whole lot of time. So hopefully we'll have some answers late this year, January at the latest is kind of what they're saying.
Thank you.
All right, so certainly a lot of activity there on the backlot area. The mill was also a big focus for us this year, although not quite as much as last year. Obviously, the project construction we were monitoring fairly closely, and certainly the cooperative agreements, the incentive package. We anticipate that we'll be back working with the town board as the revision of the project moves forward to kind of revisit. Some things have changed based on the fact that it's no longer the historic building. So we anticipate that those agreements will have to be restructured in some way, shape, or form. But our board is ready to go and excited to see what happens with the future of that project. I think, I'll stop on that. I think the main thing, after getting over the shell shock of the fire and everything, I think the main thing that I walked away with was the fact that we had established a partnership with not only the developer, but between the DDA and the town, that got us to an amazing result in a pretty amazingly compressed amount of time. So, the partnerships and the experience of working with one another, that didn't disappear with the fire. I think that infrastructure and that relationship is still here. And so as we move forward, our board is committed and has expressed interest in partnering again to see progress on that project. So I think that's a little bit of a silver lining that came out of that process. So business assistance has been another big focus for us. The facade improvement program, we went into 2017 allocating additional budget dollars available for that program. We also looked at repackaging some of our application materials to try and get word out about that program. Thus far this year, Chimney Park has been our one active application, although there's a couple others that we've heard are maybe percolating in the wings. But certainly a valuable program that's going to be making improvements. And I just want to make sure that the town board knows that those funds can also be used on the rear side of properties facing Main Street because they do face a public alley, a public right-of-way. Certainly you'll see some improvements at Chimney Park on that rear side, and we would encourage other folks to be able to take advantage of that program. And connecting people from Boardwalk Park that are coming to events and basically trying to get them pulled into the Main Street district, into the shops, into the businesses when they do come down for things like farmers market or concerts. So we've started with some signage. We have kicked off the wayfinding plan through the University of Colorado students. We will be working with them to try and make sure that is a plan that gives us some reasonable deliverables. And I think the DDA is also prepared to kind of make sure that that plan gives us what we need if the students don't deliver. So, business survey was another thing that we conducted this year. We basically broke it up into two parts. We surveyed the business owners to find out how we can provide better assistance to them. And then we also conducted a customer survey just 2 weeks ago, where we intercepted customers in the DDA and tried to find out where they were from, why they chose Windsor's downtown to shop in, and how we can communicate with them better. So in a couple of weeks we should have results from those surveys, and I think the town's got the survey on their website or Facebook, so we're just trying to get some more outreach through those means. But ultimately, trying to know our customers better and figure out how to improve the overall business vitality of downtown Windsor. Outreach was another focus for 2017. We started just a few weeks ago the block captain program, where a member of the board has been assigned to each block, so that essentially once a month about we're looking for. Those board members can circulate and talk to business owners, have somebody that those business owners can say, all right, I know who to talk to, and provide feedback to on different downtown issues or questions they might have. So what we're trying to do is program each month to have either a handout or a topic for the board members to talk about, just to kind of break the ice. Or just a hot topic that might be of interest to the business owners. So more to come on this one as it's just getting started, but we think it's got a lot of potential. And then what's brewing downtown, kind of modeled after the Coffee with the Mayor. We launched this in August and have had 2 sessions so far. And from the first session to the second session, we increased by 400%. To 4 people. So great results. Again, it's just a great opportunity to talk with folks, find out what's on their mind, maybe dispel some myths that might be out there. But definitely look forward to keeping this going in the coming year. So what's next? We did have a planning retreat a couple of weeks ago in preparation for developing our work plan. And then having that influence our budget request for the coming year. So we will be continuing focus on the boardwalk with the visioning process that's coming up with Brinkman, with a priority of focusing on communicating with the Legion and making sure that they're involved in that conversation, as well as our business owners. Additionally, we are looking at still continuing to pursue the Birch property, so you'll see that coming forward soon. The mill revitalization, again, looking forward to the 10-year anniversary and commemorating that, as well as also looking forward to the grand opening of whatever may be there. So we're ready to partner and definitely want to see that project get back on track. Growth and sustainability, we want to look at how we can partner better with the SBDC to make sure our businesses understand and know what resources are available locally. And also looking at options possibly to expand the district to see if there are folks that might be long-term good fits for downtown and kind of moving forward to hopefully help the downtown grow. The facade improvement program, we made some tweaks last year and hopefully getting more people involved. This year we're going to take that one step forward and again the goal is higher utilization of the program. We're looking at tweaking things a little bit to explore options for small project assistance. So maybe smaller improvements that people are looking for that might not be the major projects that we've seen in the past years. So just looking for ways that we can help more businesses in the community and more buildings. And one of those ways that we think might be a good option to explore is Architect on Call service. One of the businesses that opened recently this year had some issues with ADA access and how to work through some building code questions, and eventually they got to the point where they had resolved those questions, but the one thing they said to me was, boy, it sure would have helped if we could have had some assistance in having that conversation about how to use the existing building code and historic parameters of options that are available. So that might be another option that we explore to kind of help utilize that facade improvement program. And we'll definitely be continuing with partnership projects, looking to welcome new businesses with potential advertising coordination with the newspaper, as well as the radio station, so that new businesses understand how they can get the word out about their business. Also looking to continue the wayfinding program, getting the plan completed, as well as then in 2018 kind of looking at funding sign installation, at least for a first phase. And then finally, continuing to work with Boardwalk Park events. The farmers market was a great event for us, and we want to make sure that we're figuring out how to draw people more effectively into Main Street and get them into the businesses. So kind of continuing on that as a focus. And then another item that the board identified as a future concept to start looking at is traffic on Main, and continuing that conversation about ability to cross the street, folks with concerns of backing out. So I don't know that we have any answers of how to address that at this point, but certainly it's a topic of conversation that we want to look at in the coming year. So some other things that we'll be exploring, the Go Cup Entertainment District. So we were excited to see the town board pass that element, and so now I think the question is, what do we do now? So we'll certainly be looking forward to coordinating with you all on that, as well as the question has been raised of establishing a nonprofit. So potentially we have the ability to work with donations or other entities that might want to volunteer their money or time with the DDA. So some things that were question marks that we had during our strategic planning session to kind of start tackling in the coming year. So with that, we do have the formal budget memo before you. Generally, we're looking at an increase in revenues of about $42,000. A couple of key highlights, our public relations advertising is looking to be reduced by $10,000. And that primarily is due to the fact that we budgeted a higher amount last year to complete our website update, and that project has been completed. We'll skip down to special equipment 2018, increasing that to $25,000 to provide for the initial phase of wayfinding sign installation. So we're planning for that in the coming year. We'll skip down to legal services, looking to increase that number. All of the agreements and large projects that are happening generally do require a fair amount of legal assistance, and so based on experience from this year and prior year, we're proposing to increase that line item. Contractual, increasing by $17,000. Again, this is a reflection of the additional hours that are necessary to manage the program. We've taken on a number of additional things like the block captain program, improved communications, and just follow up on other smaller projects. We've applied for a number of grants this year. Main Street has a number of grants. Administering the business surveys takes time as far as the DDA goes. So kind of juggling all those different aspects falls into that category. Study review consulting, looking for an increase there as well to account for some of these larger projects. The additional time that we anticipate with Brinkman on the back lots would fall into this category, as well as any additional wayfinding information that we need, be it plan or actual construction drawings, we're anticipating would come out of this line item. And the last two items, land and easements, we have looked to budget $280,000 to account for the purchase of the Birch parcel, and also site improvements. We have included in the budget inclusion of the $500,000 that was initially targeted towards the mill, just so that that is in the budget and we know it's ready to go when we get to that point. So with that, it is a fairly conservative budget in terms of the fact that we would still have approximately $155,000 of unobligated funds at the end of the year should all of the anticipated budget be expended. So we're certainly, I guess you could say, living within our means. So with that, I'll turn it over to the board members if you've got anything else to add.
No, that's great.
That's what we pay you the big bucks, Matt. I'm teasing. No, I think you covered quite well, thank you.
I just had a question from my understanding on the revenue. The town of Windsor general fund is $250,000 as a base. Tell me what the $82,000 increment is.
Yes, and we do have a correction on that number. The increment is $107,000.
Okay.
So that is the sales tax, that is the amount of growth
Okay.
that the sales tax has increased since the district was established.
Okay. Thank you.
And the base is the amount that
Right.
has been agreed to through the IGA graciously.
So we kind of have a two-pronged attack. We're trying to create new businesses coming in, but also to be conscious and grow the businesses that are there. And with the increase in the sales tax, I think we're meeting that goal. And difference, like in my store on Saturdays, how many people are moving to this town and how much there is in change of housing. You can really tell the difference, yes.
And I think one other thing to add, we have the facade improvement program, but Fusion, the lighting store, didn't take advantage of it. They basically were ready to go. They wanted to get done with their project, and so they didn't need to take advantage of that program. So I think that's telling in and of itself as well, that there are businesses moving to town that aren't needing as much assistance, which is kind of exciting.
Did they know about the program?
They did.
There's a lot of established businesses though there's a lot of pride of ownership downtown. And a lot of the established businesses, like the person Jerry who owns the Robin's Nest building, he wants to take advantage of the new phase of the facade program that we have. Not a full-blown thing, but some help with keeping the paint updated, keeping the, all stuff, they keep our downtown really looking nice. And we're also looking at, I don't know if you want to share that, with the possibility, the banners and stuff that we're
Personalized
looking
banners.
at. downtown.
Is there any thought about maybe in 2018 with the Brinkman development of the back lots and everything else? Obviously, you talked about the north side of the back lots. I mean, the north side of the buildings facing the back lots, and that they're available for facade. That's definitely a side that could use some updating, you know, similar to Remax, Eagle Rock, et cetera, where they've got a nice presence facing north. And with the new backlots project coming in, I would think that that side of the building there would be, it would be highly advantageous to, I don't know, prod them to want to take advantage of it, or, you know, that there would be, you know, marketing reasons for them to want to have a nicer facade on the north side of their building.
Definitely. So a couple of the things that we've done, earlier this year we met with, I believe, all of the property owners on that block, as far as the mystery lot issue, and kind of talking with them about how to move forward with that process. During those conversations, we also identified that those facades would be eligible for the facade improvement program. So I think following up again with another conversation as things are moving forward to say, hey, these funds are available, you know, and it's not just a one-off kind of deal. It's a part of our annual budget that, you know, is an ongoing program. So certainly we want to encourage the use of those. The other thing is that a lot of those buildings end up getting fairly deep. And so based on retail square footages, it may not be advantageous for one business to take the full depth, but to divide that space and have a smaller footprint of retail that may be more affordable as far as an overall lease rate, but providing that visibility from that side that they wouldn't have otherwise. So
I mean, even the idea of the DDA offering to re-stucco and paint, you know, not necessarily put signage or things where it can get pricey, but just to, hey, do you mind if we came through and as a part of facade
Some of the
money?
things that are gonna happen back there as it develops, all the utilities were slated for undergrounding, which would help the back appearance a ton. But until, I think, some of the.
I think we still have an agreement with the town to take advantage of that.
A letter.
A letter, when and if we don't want to do it and then have to redo it, so once we know what the plan is, whether it's
That's what I'm saying.
what Brinkman has, you know,
Right.
unveiled, and we decide to roll with that, then I think that would be the next thing, we would look at the undergrounding.
And to answer your question, that's why we're modifying the facade program to allow that type of development too.
Guys, may I ask, I know it varies, but on the average, how many trucks come in there in a day's time? I know it varies daily, but I sat out there the other day for 6 hours and I didn't see a truck. And I just wondered,
Talking about the back alley.
in the back lots, how many trucks come in there? And your store would probably be one of the biggest users of trucks. I don't know. I'm thinking you or Manweiler, but I just don't know.
And Chimney Park gets deliveries of their food back there too.
Right.
They may not be necessarily semis, but they may be straight trucks, okay, and some vans and stuff like
But
that.
how often do they come?
Oh, I bet probably, it's probably like maybe about 9 a week.
9 a week?
I would say on average.
Sorry you sat out there for 6 hours.
Well, I am too, but I wanted to see, just because I've heard from a couple of your store owners, that there has to be an opening back there for, and you know that I've worked on a plan for back there, and I think it's beautiful, and I think it opened up the door for trucks just as well as they have now. So I just wanted to see, and I probably picked the wrong day, you might add, but by the same token, didn't see a truck of any size.
Well, there's a lot of issues too. It's also the waste pickup for garbage trucks. There's like 3 or 4 different companies that access back there. If we could somehow negotiate a good, great contract to have one pickup with one company.
I expected to see a waste truck, and I didn't see one of those. So,
Is there a particular time of day that the trucks are more likely to come to, like morning deliveries or late afternoon, or?
Seems like all mine come at lunchtime. You know? Yeah.
And you wanna go to lunch?
Yeah. Yeah. I'd say lunch or early afternoon.
But it's not semis.
Oh, yeah, there are
Is there
semis.
semis?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I get a lot of the gift stuff with semis and lumber deliveries.
Okay, so there was have to be
Semis.
room for.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
I have a question. I was looking at your ending balance for 2018's budget, and it's obviously much lower than previous years. Is that a concern, ending the year so low, heading into 19, or is that worried about that when it comes?
Oh, as far as next year, so I think that is more of a reflection of the capital
Yeah.
projects that we would be undertaking. You know, certainly, we could have been at that point this year, had several of the initiatives come to fruition. So, you know, I think that is a concern in terms of not having as big a cushion as we've been accustomed to. But I think the other element that comes to mind with that is that we're getting the dollars out and working in the community. And ultimately, you know, our role is not to necessarily be a bank account, but to actually get things happening. And so,
And it shows that, like you said, the capital, so
Yeah.
then 19, you start saving again, I guess, for the
Right.
next big plan. Right. I was just curious.
yeah.
And the hidden thing would be what we could do with the Legion. So that may be some funds to help us with that if Brinkman, if there's an answer for the Legion, we can help with that.
And I have a question maybe for staff. How many more years do we have on the agreement for the 250,000?
7 out of 10, right? Just 7 out of 10.
That's a concern we have.
We've renewed it for another 5, 2 years ago.
A couple of years ago.
I think it was just last
It's
year.
just like last year. yeah.
Going on.
It
It
was
was just last year.
So we would have 4 years left.
Right.
So we're at
Six.
6, 7.
This is our first, this is our 6th year,
I believe so.
Yes.
So we're just-
complete.
This
On the
time-
Legion? We're
This
talking
time
about
last year. we-
No, the IGA with the town
With
with
the
the sales
sales
tax.
tax.
Oh, okay, yeah.
18,
voted.
7, 19,
That, I think it's the one.
2018.
It's a year closer.
I thought we voted before the election, when John
We did.
was still here.
You did,
We did vote.
That's what I'm saying, I think you're already going to 7 out of 10.
Okay.
yeah.
All right.
Well, I know we modified it with the mill, I think is maybe what I'm
Okay.
recalling. That might be where.
Not the
But
specific
that
would have been for
IGA,
that-
that was for that project.
Final
No,
November,
Yeah.
and then
the
it's.
sales tax IGA was just a 5-year.
It's been on
Right.
years.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, we wanted to get it done before. Okay, I was just curious.
Yeah.
We're on our way, but not there yet, so we may need some more help.
No, I assume that. I was just curious.
Although we saw some projections with what the mail had projected, and within 3 years, I think we were substantially break even ourselves. So it won't take very, I mean, if it proves to fruition what was anticipated, and that was just with one project. There could be other projects now coming into line. We also have other buildings that have been purchased, and, you know, something is hopefully going to be happening with those that could, you know, add on to the sales tax retail and tax increment as well, so.
I think it would just come down to the capital projects, if they can afford those without our
Right.
IGAs. That'll be the hard part, the big stuff.
Yeah, so it's important that we get the mill back on the table.
Right.
So, essentially, the analysis that we had done was identifying that the DDA revenues from just the property tax would have been about 77,000 annually on that project, as it was contemplated previously. So, you know, it is a huge, huge project for the DDA and sustainability. So, you know, if that does not materialize in a similar fashion as we had previously anticipated, I think the sustainability of the DDA gets bumped out many, many years beyond that, so.
Can I ask a question for you? On the after-hours special that's in the flyer, did you have many places take you up on that?
Yeah, so I believe we had about 6 different businesses, and we actually created a small flyer,
Record?
a rack card that was put out so that people could pick it up as they were walking by that said, here are 6 businesses that are open after hours or have specials going on and things like that.
They were
So,
actually attached to that sign
Okay.
that you saw.
yeah.
Says folks maybe left the farmer's market or were coming into, the rack cards were there that let folks know and it listed all of the sip, snip, shop, and savor places that we happen to have, which represents the key core element of business.
And I refilled it a bunch of times.
Okay.
And then
Those two
I
sound
also
scary,
had people
too.
come back from out of town that had family
Could get hurt.
at the events, and then would come in on Saturdays and then Sundays too, and mention it. So,
And we're actually kind of taking the same approach with Small Business Saturday and Windsor Wonderland of asking businesses, do they have specials that will happen those days? So that we can kind of promote, come downtown and here's what you can do, here's some great things that are happening, so.
Okay. I just know the couple times we tried grabbing dinner after a concert, no one was open.
Oh,
So it kind of made me go, well, are some of these businesses taking advantage of the huge influx of people that the
Yeah.
Thursday night concerts are bringing?
that's what we're hoping to do, and it's a kind of a two-way street of, is the information there that the people who are in the park know that businesses are open, and then vice versa, are the businesses actually open to take advantage of the shoppers and the patrons? So it's, constant struggle, so.
It's kind of a challenge for the business owner too, isn't it, to anticipate utilities, staff,
Right.
and how many
Right.
customers you might be getting. That's why I was asking if you're seeing foot traffic coming in from
To
these
justify.
events. Because you have to have enough to justify
Yeah,
keeping your staff there,
Right.
lights on,
yeah.
I just know the night we
But
tried
restaurant-
going to Hara, they weren't seating any people because it was 9 o'clock and they were closed, but the place was packed.
Sure,
So
Mhm.
it was just kind of an interesting
yeah.
thing that,
And the other question I had was, is there any information on what Blue Ocean is planning to do with the old Duke location?
At this point, I don't have any additional information. I think they're demoing.
Yeah,
They're doing some renovations inside.
remediating first, asbestos.
So we've not had any formal applications for facade improvements or anything like
Yeah,
that.
plans
so,
last week, yeah.
yeah.
Would it, I'm thinking outside the box here. You had mentioned that the lighting store didn't take advantage of the facade improvements. And maybe they did or didn't know about it. Maybe they just didn't, maybe they thought there was too much red tape, or whatever, to get their hands on whatever that fundage is and whatever that might mean. But is there any way to go to them after the fact and say, hey, you were eligible for something? No, all right, well.
It can't be used retroactively.
They made a huge investment, obviously, to put in the store and the facade and everything, and so.
Paul, I was looking over the budget meeting notes today, and you had talked at the budget meeting at the town board about flowers in downtown and the transition of DDEA being more actively engaged and all that. Do you want to bring that point up again?
Yes, actually, I did, in our, budget meeting, I was just asking about, we've all gotten a lot of feedback about how beautiful downtown was from all the flower pots and everything else that was down there. And there may be other things that I'm missing too, the tree care and all of that other stuff, but, especially the flower pots, but it was our Parks and Rec department that was talking about that, I believe, because that falls under Parks and Rec, isn't it?
Mhm.
Yeah. And all I was asking is because the businesses down there benefit from that, if there couldn't be some cost sharing, because I think the reason it came up in the budgetary meetings, we were talking about who does what, because I think that's under the forestry part of the Parks and Rec budget, and so we were just talking about whether or not the DDA would be willing to share in the cost of that, of the maintenance.
Right.
Granted, it's seasonal, we're only talking about a season, but it sure made downtown.
Is it the right amount? Do you want more? Does anybody ever talk about the looks downtown, or does everybody think it's just about right, or is there? More interest and more?
Yeah,
or
I've
less?
just gotten positive feedback, you know, nothing critical.
And I think what we had talked about is, didn't we have like a dedicated person to
Yeah,
just
the
downtown or
horticulturist,
something? There was somebody that was dedicated this last summer for just that segment, and that's why it was dynamite all the time, so. I'm throwing it out as an idea, it was just something, a brainstorming thing that we had thought about with, and I don't know how it works, or,
Right.
I just had mentioned that the DDA stands to obviously benefit from that looking as good as it did, and drawing and attracting, and, you know, people wanting to stay downtown, et cetera, so I just threw out the idea, and I'm glad he reminded me of that, I don't know, we just agreed we'd talk about it when the DDA was here, so.
Can you share some numbers so we can visit on that? Or what we need?
Yeah, I think, yeah, we can do that. I think it was in context of, you know, when do you want to do more and such or not? And how do you, if you do, how does that model work between the town and DDA and such? So I think that was kind of what you were leaning towards. Of when does some of these efforts get transferred so other efforts can happen if that happens or not, is kind of what I think Paul was talking about generally. So.
Yeah.
Well, and the marketing committee is kind of on that track, and they're gonna be presenting to the board this Wednesday, because what we wanted to do is, first of all, we found these personalized banners that would have a photo of one of our veterans, and like where they served, and we thought, with that, so that kind of started the whole conversation, that if we're gonna have banners downtown, we want to create our own banners that are more personalized. Maybe they have photos of our business folks, instead of just these generic ones that say, fall is here, spring, you know, or spring into whatever. And so that also prompted the question of, I believe Matt's gonna figure out how many light poles we have in downtown.
16.
How, 16, you found out? Okay.
16.
How long does Excel gonna allow us to do this, or at some
They
point?
will.
Or at some point in time, do we think about purchasing our own unique poles with even we looked at some that have the flowers that can hang from the light poles themselves,
Because
as
they
well as banners.
won't let us do that.
Right.
And so to expand on your flower idea, then we thought about that.
So it's all gonna depend on budget and money, of course, but the first thing is, I know we wanna look at creating our own banners and personalizing, which means then we also have to still partner with the town to put them up for us. But that kind of started that other conversation piece as to what else we might do.
Matt, also in our budget, Dennis talked to the board, I think the board included $250,000 almost for the bulb out and the extension downtown improvements from Fourth to Third.
Goes from Fourth to First, as far as restriping the lanes.
Right, and then the bulb outs, physical build outs,
Third.
Third and Fourth, right?
Well, there's only, yeah, you're right, we gotta go back and forth and do that one.
Right.
Yeah.
So that'll be scheduled to be done in conjunction with the mill.
Fantastic.
Which is also, I think, where those planters sit, the big ones that we're talking about, that everybody's been raving about, are in those bulb out areas, yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
The reason this came up is one of the line items in the budget was specifically about the downtown, like Eric Lucas was talking about how he had somebody dedicated, and I was like, wow, that's downtown, the town's paying for it, they look great, but yet the DDA also benefits from that being down there, that's the whole way that came up, so.
So if we can get some numbers on that, we'll get it to the board.
I think we also want to look at partnering with the town on parking on the south side of the, you know, all those individual business owners back in there have indicated, which is private parking right now. Most of the, I think, several of those business owners have indicated they would allow for after-hours parking for our events, but they would want to make sure that there is the right kind of signage, or we have a permission, with the town and the striping of those lots, so that there's no liability on their end if somebody should park there after hours. But that would add additional event and downtown parking if we could figure out. But I think that's something we've determined we need to work with the town on that.
Yeah, that is one of the items in our work plan for the coming year, is kind of exploring all the what ifs and the how tos and.
Yeah, the parking study indicated there's plenty of room back there. In fact, it talked about event and/or when a new business comes in, having that business go enter into a lease arrangement as part of, to have it as counted spaces towards parking and stuff, so. Pull out that parking master plan.
Okay.
There's quite a bit of discussion how to better use those back lots on south side, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
I had a question about the Brinkman study. This really isn't budget, but the scope of what Brinkman is doing, will that include any type of a market analysis of what type of businesses would complement and fit downtown? Would that be part of that?
I think he's
He talks about
using,
that, yeah.
Okay,
well, I know he's using the study that the town did as far as the retail analysis.
okay,
I think they're gonna supplement it with the residential and office
okay.
components to make sure that their design is being driven by the market, so that it's feasible as far as what they plan for will reflect the economy.
And would their report have any recommendations as far as traffic patterns, not just parking, but traffic patterns, pedestrian patterns downtown? Pedestrian bridge across Main Street, you know?
I'm assuming that those
I think it'd be a good idea, but.
I'm assuming those conversations will come
How
up.
extensive is there?
I don't know that we can say 100% for sure.
Well,
what-
I think you have to, eventually you're gonna have to buy off on something if they want a sentence or anything like that. So you're gonna be heavily involved in
Mhm.
that partnership determination of what there is, and you're gonna ask those questions.
Yeah, I was just getting my understanding of what Brinkman is actually going to present.
That's gonna be over time. So they have an initial thought, I believe, would be my guess. And then with the next few months are going to be roll those through some public process and see what is positive or negative about those. And then be modified, but it'll be market driven and DDA towns accepted. So two windows they have to walk through. We get there. Is that right?
Yeah.
I think generally?
Okay.
That's gonna be really interesting, I think. I think one of the more compelling conversations I had with Matt was with somebody this week where they're investing downtown. And they said they have direction to be heavily involved in downtown. Many aspects they went through. And I kind of went like, and he goes, why not? I said, okay, good answer, good question. He just says, why not? Why wouldn't you be a part of something there? And so, I think that's, that whole tender's changing, is why not? Not why, but why not? And so that was kind of a cool 2 words. So why not? And what's happening downtown?
I had a person offer a suggestion on downtown parking a couple weeks ago, so I'm just, this is not a budget, just throwing it out, it's just kind of interesting. He had just come back from a large city back east, Boston, where they have diagonal parking in some areas, but they do it differently, instead of pulling straight in like we do. I don't know if you maybe have heard this. It's like parallel parking, you go up and then you back in. So as you're pulling it out, you can see what cars are coming. So theoretically, it's safer. I don't know.
If you can
There's a
back
block up in Steamboat Springs, down by the river. Go down there and try it out and see what you think.
Is that, do they back into the?
Yeah.
I
There's a
guess
full
people,
block down there.
as you stop and get ready to back in, people pull up right behind you. And back east, everybody blows their horns. So,
Mhm.
you know, I don't think it's really safe, but it's an interesting idea.
Yeah. I've not experienced it myself, but I've heard a lot about it, so. All right.
Any other questions for any of the DDA folks before we?
So the next step would be if you have no modifications, and I don't think the number that we're giving for flowers, I don't think that rises to that level, but as provided, this is the budget you're providing to the town board, right?
That's
The
correct.
DDA has approved, so you, town board, unless you have something tonight, this would be on your November meeting and follow the adoption of your budget, I believe is how we do it, so. Everybody's good with it to run into November? Okay, great.
All right. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you Wednesday.
Yep.
We're supposed to go on our, done by Wednesday.
I have another thing with
Milwaukee, see Yankee, see Mickey Mantle plays, took out 3 times and played first base. They're still great.
They're up 3-0, so.
These are, that's good.
You wanna come back?
It's frustrating. My daughter lives on Addison, right down Black and Wrigley. She's hoping to come to her. She says parking's a nightmare already. Thank you.
Okay, so we have our next presenter, I think, ready for MS4 stormwater permit and ordinance discussion. And
So
Des,
Des is going to lead this. She drew the long straw, and she's happily been engaged. Actually, it's been kind of an interesting process for all of us to learn this. And when we looked and talked about who we want to put a point person, Des has stepped in and has been doing really well on it for about, 6 to 9 months probably. You've been learning extensively about it. So here we are today. Des is going to give you the presentation on where we are today and then where we're going. So with that, I'm going to turn over to Des.
Well, hello, again, my name is Dessa Blair. I'm an engineer with the town. And tonight I'm going to discuss our MS4 program. So I'm going to discuss stormwater, the impacts it has on our water bodies, and what is being done about it. So according to the EPA, stormwater runoff is the #1 cause of polluted water in the United States. So what is stormwater runoff? Well, when rain or snow melts flow over a polluted surface, those pollutants are picked up with the runoff. And that is essentially stormwater runoff, or pollutants. So take, for example, a construction site. So equipment on a construction site might leak things like oil, gas, solvents, things like that. Those pollutants are picked up with the stormwater runoff. And we've all seen like dust blowing off the construction site or trash. Those also get washed into the storm sewer system. And we know that industrial facilities have their fair share of pollutants. But what about your front yard? Residential developments are actually big polluters. So when rain falls on a pervious surface, such as grass or landscaping, it generally soaks in, but when it falls on an impervious surface, such as a driveway or sidewalk, it runs off faster, it generates more runoff. So take, for example, this diagram. So let's look at like fertilizer. When you over-fertilize, when that gets on the sidewalk and then it rains, excuse me, those pollutants are washed into the storm sewer system. Same with like excessive grass clippings or leaves. If you blow those into the street, those get washed into the storm sewer. Same with pet waste. That creates bacteria. Same with more motor oil, things like that from your vehicles. So all that gets washed into the storm sewer system. And this water goes untreated directly into our waterways. So there is no treatment facility at the end of the process. There's no treatment plant. There are mitigation measures like detention ponds to reduce sediment, but again, there's no treatment plant. So what exactly is a storm sewer system? Well, it's anything that conveys stormwater. So it's an inlet, pan, curb and gutter in the streets, anything that's made to move stormwater. So 215 million Americans, more than 70%, live within 2 miles of a polluted water body. So even in our own backyard, the Poudre River is on the state's list of impaired waters for having high levels of E. coli, arsenic, cadmium, high temperatures. So we are not immune from this. So some of the effects of stormwater pollution, sediment's a big one. So sediment can cloud the water, it smothers habitats. And think about like a river, a cross-section of a river. So if you have water flowing through there, and then say you fill it up with sediment, then not only does that increase flooding, because now you no longer have capacity for your water, but it increases velocities. So when your water's going through really fast, your aquatic habitat can't compensate, and so they can't exist. Algae blooms. Algae is caused from excessive nutrients being washed into the waterways. So this is from things like over-fertilizing, excessive, or blowing leaves, again, grass clippings, things like that. Those create extra nutrients. And this causes algae blooms. And besides the algae itself being a problem, when algae die, it sinks to the bottom. And when it decomposes, the process dissolves oxygen out of the water. And so aquatic life can't exist with low or no oxygen in the water. Bacteria and other pathogens. So these obviously can create health hazards, cause swim beach closures, things like that. So these are obviously dangerous in our waters. Trash. So obviously we know what trash is. Things like water bottles, plastic, six-pack rings, cigarette butts. So these can suffocate, disable, and kill aquatic life. Hazardous waste. So things like insecticides, pesticides, solvents, paints, things like that get into the water and they poison fish. And then this can affect land animals or people when they eat the diseased fish or shellfish, and then the people and animals can become sick and die. And then polluted drinking water obviously can affect human health and can result in exorbitant treatment costs.
None of Windsor Plaza though.
So what is being done about this?
That's one bad thing, right?
Yeah, that's,
Yeah, this is Windsor Lake. So in 1969, industrial waste caused the Cuyahoga River in Cleveland to catch on fire for the 13th time. So this motivated Congress, and in 1972, they created the Clean Water Act. So to be compliant with the Clean Water Act, the EPA created the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, or NPDES. So the first round of regulations related to stormwater addressed MS4s. So MS4 stands for Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System. Municipal storm sewer system is essentially a publicly owned storm sewer system, town-owned in our case. Storm sewer system, anything that conveys stormwater. The word separate implies that it is not connected to like a sanitary sewer system, so there's no treatment plant at the end of the process. It is separate. So that's MS4, that's what it stands for. So in 1990, medium and large MS4s were required to obtain NPDES permits, and these were known as phase 1s. And in 1999, small MS4s were brought online. Excuse me, and these are known as phase 2s. So large MS4 is defined as an incorporated area having 250,000 or more residents. And then medium and small as follows. We are, of course, small. But not every jurisdiction that is less than 100,000 people qualifies as a small MS4. We qualify because the Census Bureau has defined areas within our boundary as having urbanized clusters. And so what this means is that there are areas that have between 2,500 and 50,000 residents. So we then qualified. And so our MS4 permit was issued in January of this year, so 2017, by the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment, or the CDPHE. So although this is a federally mandated program, the states regulate it, and then local agencies execute the program, run the program. So to comply with NPDES permit, we have to come up with a stormwater management plan, abbreviated SWMP, often referred to as a swamp plan. And this plan consists of 6 minimum control measures, and this is regulated through the state. So the first of these control measures is public education and outreach. So with this step, essentially we educate the community about what MS4 is and stormwater, the impacts of stormwater pollution. And we do this through mailers, social media. We plan to send out a mailer, something looks a lot like this. Here's some examples of other jurisdictions' mailers. So we'll do something along the lines of that. And then again with our website, social media. Number 2, public participation and involvement. So with this step, we essentially just let the community know that they can have review and input on our stormwater management plan. And we'll do that through our website and social media. Number 3, illicit discharge detection and elimination. It's known as IDDE. So what an illicit discharge is, it's essentially anything that is discharged into the into our water bodies from the storm sewer system that is not pure stormwater. So I don't know if you can see the background of this picture, but there's some green stuff coming out of that pipe. The inside looks like Gatorade. So the Gatorade is an illicit discharge because it's not pure stormwater.
Or Gatorade.
Yes. So part of this program, we develop, implement, and enforce a program essentially to detect illicit discharges. We're also going to do outfall mapping, where we regularly monitor our outfalls to make sure that there are no illicit discharges. And then we are going to implement and enforce procedures. We do this through ordinances, which Ian and I have been working on. And then we inform the public essentially about illicit discharges and the hazards associated. Number 4, construction site runoff control. This is what it sounds like. Here we monitor what comes off of a construction site. So we develop, implement, and enforce a program to reduce stormwater discharges. This is done through sediment and erosion control measures, which is what you can see in this picture. So you can see the straw wattles around the pond and the erosion control blankets. So those are put in place to reduce stormwater, or reduce sediment runoff from stormwater. And part of this step will include inspections to make sure that these are properly implemented. Number 5, post-construction management. So this is after the project has been constructed. So here we inspect stormwater controls to make sure that they are operating as designed. And then we implement a program for long-term operation and maintenance of BMPs, which are best management practices. And what these are essentially are just anything that's used to reduce stormwater runoff. So they have what are referred to as structural BMPs and non-structural BMPs. So a structural BMP is essentially just like a detention pond or swale, something like that. A non-structural BMP would be like just keeping your streets clean, keeping trash off the streets. So here we make sure that BMPs are functioning as designed through routine inspections. Number 6, the last of the 6 minimum control measures, pollution prevention and good housekeeping of our municipal operations. So this involves developing a program essentially to reduce stormwater pollutants runoff from the sites. So this will involve creating SOPs or standard operating procedures for all of our facilities. And then here we will train staff on how to detect illicit discharges and how to reduce them. To be compliant with the permit, we have what is referred to as a program description document. This is essentially our stormwater management plan. What this is an outline that's provided by the regulatory agency that essentially walks us through the process. And so our the whole stormwater permit, we're given about 5 years to set up our program. So we are 10 months into the 5-year process. So some of you might have questions about the implementation process. We actually reached out to a few peer communities of similar size. So I contacted Evans, Erie, Firestone, Durango, Montrose. So of the few that responded, we have figured that we're going to need additional inspectors on staff and possibly a stormwater coordinator. And then the Colorado Stormwater Council, of which we are a member, actually conducted a survey, a comprehensive survey, asking a lot of the same questions that we had. So anybody that's a member will participate in the survey, and then once the results are published, we should have a better understanding of what other jurisdictions are doing. So this is our working calendar. So what this is, essentially, it kind of lays out the startup process. So our main focus in 2018 is going to be the public education and outreach portion. And then here we also set up our IDDE plan, which is our illicit discharge detection and elimination plan. And that's already in the works. 2019, we don't actually have deadlines for a lot of these bullet points here, but these are prerequisites to what's coming up in the middle of 2019. So a lot of this is going to include staff training on illicit discharges, developing a lot of our programs, and then we actually start to execute a lot of this in July of 2019, so that includes our ordinances. That's when they will be executed. Our development review will include reviewing site plans and subdivision plans to make sure, for compliance, to make sure the contractors are following what they're supposed to be. A lot of training and, like I said, inspections. Then in 2020, nutrient resource reduction for municipal operations, essentially reducing fertilizers, things like that. And 2021, outdoor bulk storage. Again, just how to reduce pollutants from getting into our storm sewer system from bulk storage. So I know this has been a lot of information, but I hope you have a better understanding of the MS4 program. Remember that anything that goes into the storm sewer system goes into our waterways.
Ends up in water.
Treated.
So if I
Ends up in Water Valley.
So thanks, Des, and she's going to stay, and I really appreciate the presentation. I just want to bring up a couple points. So we became this cluster based upon 2010 census. And so the state knew they were going to have new communities like us, Erie and Firestone, who were going to qualify for this permit. Boy, they spent the better part of 4 years messing with the rules, trying to figure it out, because they're moving into small towns now, or smaller towns, and so we've been watching this, participating for a good period of time, waiting, and here we are today. So it's our turn, and if you look back at number 3, 4, 5, and 6 in the steps, the word enforcement's in there, mandatory, things like that. That this really, the impacts to us and communities like us means we are going to be moving into a different era of operations for stormwater, both from an operational perspective, from public works, but then within the community itself. And my experience on these are that we'll have to do a good job in education, we'll have to do all those things. Most national builders or anybody that's been out there is well aware of all these type of regulations. But the local folks may not be as much. And the devil's gonna be in the detail on the ordinance. And Deza said, July 19, we'll probably run it a little bit early, just so you can take some looks at it a couple times, make sure you understand it. But it is a fairly comprehensive ordinance that adopts most everything that you just saw in some form or fashion when it talks about the enforcement aspects and the mandates and such like that. So next year is just us getting acclimated to it, really putting together the publicity effort and kind of start some of the front-end development review items, getting everybody on board, let them know it's coming. But really then we're going to spend quite a bit of time developing a work plan and what the budget implications are going to be for 19 and on, for us to be able to implement this. So Des has done a great job getting at this stage, and she's going to stay on it, but this next year is going to figure it out. And so with that, I'm going to leave it up to you to ask questions of Devin.
Is there any, I have some neighbors that pretty unabashedly just put grass clippings in the gutter. There's no, I mean, until we have an ordinance, there's no fiscal, there's no cost to the town because we don't even treat it.
Right.
So it just goes in the river, and the impact is obviously on the river, but there's no real financial cost to the town.
Correct. And so we're gonna implement through code enforcement, maybe not necessarily tickets, but try to encourage people.
Education.
Yes, not to do this, and,
Yeah.
but no, there's no financial impact.
But it will be dependent then on somebody notifying, like you would because obviously they're not gonna turn themselves in.
Exactly.
You would probably have to notify the town,
Yeah.
and when it's happening now, because it's probably not gonna do any good if you do it after you have to catch them or see
They're
them.
gonna wish they didn't live next to a board member.
As they're doing it, I would assume.
I try other neighbors.
And that will be on our website where you can report illicit discharges. And we're also going to incorporate it on yourgov.com.
And we should educate landscapers, because we have
They're big.
one guy comes through and just blows it into the street.
Like into the big grade thing?
They blow in the gutter.
Into the gutter, let the water.
It goes down the street.
Kind of like after they've come
I had a
through their
couple
trimmers,
Yes.
and they blow it off the
Blow,
sidewalk.
blow.
Oh, blow.
I had some questions about the staffing, but you answered that. What happens to a town if we're not in compliance with those 6 things? Who's monitoring that?
The state
Not that we would
does,
not be in
the
compliance, but I'm just
state, the
curious.
state does inspections
The state does
occasionally.
inspections, okay.
On behalf of EPA.
Correct.
Okay. All right.
If-
And the other question I had was, talking about educating, what's our biggest market that we need to educate to? Is it the homeowners, is it the home builders, is it
We can
industry?
pick that, that's up to us, but I'm thinking it's either gonna be homeowners or maybe landscapers.
They might be the hardest group to get to, wouldn't they?
Yeah.
Homeowners.
So that's what we're thinking is the utility bill insert, so we can send this to every single
Which is-
resident.
Yeah, but it didn't really
in
educate,
Windsor.
because builders, you can sit down face to face and talk to.
Right.
Homeowners,
You're gonna put that in maybe with like utility
Yeah,
billing,
exactly.
right?
So it should go to every single resident.
I have 3 questions.
All right, go ahead.
Go ahead,
All right, I'll go.
finish up
So,
yours.
tagging on to Ken's, is there let's say we do all 6 of these and we're just great, but our residents still are discharging. Would the state inspect the flow into the river? Is that what?
They want to see, they want you to monitor your progress.
Right.
So essentially, they want to see that what you're doing is working. So I'm not entirely sure how they'll monitor discharges from residents, but
So are
one of our
we,
goals.
do we have a baseline right now that where we know where we're at, so that we know like if we are improve or we get worse? Is that like we've gone out and
I
we've
think it's.
tested or
No,
whatever?
I don't think there's, well, my personal experience is there's not a whole lot of physical verification.
Okay.
There'll be some operational components. They'll go check, I wouldn't be surprised if they would check some of our stormwater facilities and verify we're keeping them clean, those type of elements. But they won't go out and check water samples. But they'll check your progress on that notebook. Like, what have you done? Check. Have you done this program? Check. Are you doing your best efforts? Show us what your
And
best
they want
efforts
you
are.
to record everything. Every complaint you record, how you responded to it.
They assume if we're doing all this stuff, the results will be there.
Exactly.
That's probably a good way to say it.
Okay.
That's different.
Fair enough.
So we have 5 years to finalize or complete. And it looks like we have a pretty, I mean, a plan in place. So I'm guessing we're gonna meet that 5-year or be done with it before then. That's the,
Yeah, and I was certain you were here when I said that the rubber hits the road when you'll do the ordinance next year. That's really gonna be your enforcement tool. But we'll have to put all the elements in place then to start enforcing it.
but we'll be ready well within the 5-year realm, it appears.
Yes, pieces of this, yeah.
And what does the financial impact, what is this costing us? Do we know? I mean, in
Figure it out.
addition to, do we have a,
We said we're
I
gonna
mean-
spend next year getting most of this put together, and we'll have ready for 19 to 22, or whatever it is, 3-year layout essentially of how we're gonna roll this program out. But we have not put numbers to it yet.
and the party that's dedicated for the town of Windsor is
So far.
Desi with engineering?
Deza.
Okay, or
Yeah.
Deza, I'm sorry.
Yep, so Deza is our go-to person right now.
Okay.
Yep.
And she reports on a regular basis with Public Works, or how does Public
Dennis.
Works or integrate into this? Or does Public Works, I mean, because Terry's here, so I'm just
Yeah.
wondering, what is the relationship between
So
Public Works
if
and?
you go back to slide 4,
The man on
Des and I have talked quite a bit about it, and once Kelly gave it to her, she's just went right away.
well, one of these, let's go to 5, there we go. That's gonna be Public Works right there. So that's everything we do operationally. We'll have to do the mowing, we already do that, make sure the street clean. There's elements we're already doing, we'll just have to figure out what other additional components we're doing that we'll have to do.
The other thing, if you have a hazmat spill or a train car go over and it spills material, you gotta know where that water's going so you can trap it and keep it from getting to a river or canal or ditch or lake.
Did I just avoid the term, but, and I'm not gonna write you any letters, but what about, I wanna hear from this department about fracking. And how, let's say, you know, they're doing it well up on the hill, and they're doing it right down by the river, and we've heard that for years, you know. What is this department's response to? We've heard another response, more than I ever want to hear it, but, sorry, we're on TV too, I suppose.
Well, I think that goes into, I think, and I don't know, who do you want to answer that?
This department, the,
Okay, well, the
Yes, or-
BMPs are what's gonna be important, the best management practices that we
I'm
put in our
sorry, I didn't
the
understand.
best management practices that we put on the conditional use permits are gonna be the elements that we're gonna use to evaluate what they are doing to
well, I'm just
control.
thinking, is it part of this plan? That's all I'm asking.
I would think, I would say yes,
Because we've
and,
heard it for years since
Right.
I've been on this board, and I'm not arguing, I'm all for fracking, and I'm all
Right.
for
right.
what they're doing, but, we're gonna hear.
I would say, Ivan, this is, I don't wanna say this is unequivocal, but I believe that the COGCC rules taking all these into consideration on these operators.
That's
So-
one thing I wanted to hear for sure,
Yeah,
because I believe that.
yeah, so I don't,
And I think we've done it too as a board, when we've talked to the people, the industrial people. and-
We have never talked internally about any extra elements of what this may bring to what they're doing operationally. I guess we've never even considered it. I mean, what I believe they're doing on their operations is meeting these components. Now, when we get into it, we may come to a different conclusion. But I believe they are doing those because that would be a regulated item from the state.
They might have their own permits.
Yeah, and they also get their own permits up there.
And they do, and if there's an issue, people can call the Colorado Oil and Gas Conservation Commission. They can give them a call and they'll send out a state inspector. So there's forms people can fill out if there's issues with runoff or with air, light, a variety of things, and it's all regulated through the state.
Well, I'm not trying to be negative at all,
No.
I mean, we've heard it, and I didn't hear it at all in this presentation, so, and I think
Really
that's-
haven't gotten that level of detail. We've done more what ifs, more at the smaller level as we think about this through this, so.
That industry is theoretically inspected by the state, right? So that's,
Mhm.
should be.
Correct, theoretically, that's correct.
And if they have a spill over a certain amount, they gotta report it to,
Right.
you know.
And so through this, we're probably not going to be required to do an additional inspection of it.
Well, I'm sure some of that comes into,
Technical and.
We don't have the level that we had a few years ago of the trucks. Remember, we talked about the trucks coming down the hill, and, you know, we haven't had as much, but we did then. So that's what we were hearing, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And some of you are new to the board, but I,
Now, probably what I would say is a direct result of maybe those operations at times. And I would say, and I put this universally, with any kind of construction, is the tracking of mud onto the streets.
Right.
That definitely falls into this program.
I was gonna say, that was kind of my
Yeah,
thought, is it would
yeah.
fall under the same type of issues
Right.
you would have with construction as far as,
Right.
you know, dust mitigation,
Right,
erosion mitigation, some of those kind of concerns.
right.
Which we're doing now anyway, like with mud on the streets, that's, we're already doing that.
We try to,
Right.
yes.
Try to, right.
Yes.
well, that was one of the reasons to bring up the berms, you know, like the berms around the wells. So we've had all that discussion, but, okay.
You have to send letters out to all the detention pond and retention pond owners if they're not keeping it maintained right, so then you put in your letter what they need to do, and then we have to go and inspect it. So,
So this picture brought up a question. How often do we run our street sweeper? Is it just summer or as needed or?
we run street sweeper every month, you know, 2 or 3 times, about 2 weeks each month. Now that the leaves are falling, you'll see the street sweeper out a little more often. But we also then, after the season come next spring, then we'll lift out all of the, and check all of our basins to make sure that they're not clogged up with leaves or debris or trash. We clean all those out. You know, I think Windsor has some of the cleanest streets around.
Well, could a component be maybe more often? We have this beautiful chip seal redone in the neighborhood I've seen, but there is so much sediment in the gutters right now. And I'm just thinking, this is all.
Just let us know, because Terry gets that one from me all the time too, so yeah, there is.
I mean-
What you need to remember, we have 2 street sweepers. One's primarily used this time of year because it works better on leaves. Then we have the other one that works better on what you're talking about, so.
But yeah, if you have areas, let us know.
Well, speaking of this, since he brought this up, all of the neighborhoods that just recently got the slurry seal, I think we need to run the street sweeper, because I mean, there's just loose gravel everywhere, because until it actually settles in, it's like loose gravel, and just dragging around keeps loosening it up. I mean, we just hope for the point that we're not tracking it into driveways and garages, but I mean, it's in the gutters and everything else.
Yeah, and we can do that. We can get the sweeper out to get those areas, but it's an ongoing thing for several months after it's put down. So.
Years.
Terry, you say you have 2, do you need more?
Not really. I mean, two suffice, because you need to have people running them too, so.
Are they equipped with different brushes? You said they're different.
Yeah, the Timco is more of an air system, whereas the other sweeper, you know, has the brooms that, you know, manually put it up into the hopper. So each one of them is good for the use we use them for, but like I say, you don't see the Timco most of the summer.
It's my feeling that it's probably one of your most expensive service you provide.
It is.
For the bang for the buck.
Really?
You mean the equipment?
The equipment,
The purchase.
the labor,
Is the
everything.
labor a lot?
The cost of running the
minimum, the benefit of that effort, for the costs we spend on it. And
But that might translate into the cost thing like she was at,
Is
because
this
if all of a
part of the
sudden we're
plan?
needing to make sure gutters
Well, but I
are.
think it's also part of the education, where we need to remind homeowners that it's not just the town's responsibility. After you mow or do something, you should be sweeping your own sidewalks and even your streets.
Or you can get the gutter out in front of your own house, I mean.
You know, if there's, you know, you can't rely on government to take care of every single thing, every single time.
Well, as soon as the wind blows, you get stuff back in the gutter. So
Mhm.
it's just, yeah.
Like Saturday.
We're out of there.
Trampolines in the gutter?
Yeah.
So question on the implementation, the one slide said that they started for small communities back in like 99. So what was the delay from 99 when that started to us just now?
We didn't qualify in 2000 census. So 2000 census, the way they kind of figured this out with the clusters, so we were able not to have this hit us during 2000.
So we were small enough.
Yeah, but in 2010.
So there's a bottom.
There's a threshold in that.
Yeah, right,
Okay.
I'm sorry.
The
yeah.
way that slide read was
It's-
like
well, it's-
everyone under
it's,
99,000.
There's a definition to census cluster or.
Okay, so we were small enough, it didn't apply to us until recently. Okay.
Right.
Urbanized areas, they call them.
And then the other question I had kind of follows up on what you were saying, Terry, as far as when you say the privately held detention ponds, like I'm assuming, like Westwood Village, we've got a couple ponds that I know are detention ponds. So when those get an accumulation of trash or algae bloom issues or whatever it might be, it's the responsibility of those property owners or the HOA to address those issues
Correct.
as
That's
part of
correct.
compliance with this.
And
Okay.
when we see them, or we inspect them, we have about 106, I think. So we have to inspect those and notify the people that aren't keeping up with them in the form of a letter, and then give them so many days to accomplish the task that we've advised them of what they need to do, so.
Okay, so town-owned retention ponds, that falls on the town to clean out, but if it's part of an HOA,
But the town has like 6, and the other 100 are private.
right?
So they might need special outreach, right?
I think it's a good effort. I mean, we all appreciate clean water and ponds and rivers, and so it's a big challenge, the education piece of it.
Yeah.
But I appreciate the effort.
Stay tuned.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Future board meetings?
Future board meetings, let's see. Next week, 5 o'clock, it says 6 o'clock, but 5 o'clock is the Public Works Building dedication. And I think we're all set for that.
Just go directly there.
Yes. Go directly there.
Did we need to register for that?
No,
Okay.
we know you're coming this person.
Well, I got the email and I'm like, I supposed to fill this out? Okay.
You're good.
You're good.
You're
Your
just
VIP
expected
status,
to be
so
there.
you're all right.
VIP, nice.
My
You're just
RSVP
expected to be.
I had a Well County lunch on my calendar for Friday. Is that the one that is now happening in November? Is that, or is?
We got dinner Thursday night. right?
Yeah, Thursday
Yeah,
night.
I got a Thursday, I got Thursday,
Yeah.
but I have something on
Wednesday.
Friday.
Friday, Will County lunch.
But that's nothing that you're aware of, right, Patty?
Not
That's.
that I know of, but.
And I'm thinking maybe it got moved to this joint meeting with Well County Commissioners on November 7th. Is that a Friday too? Let's see here, I'm guessing, that's.
That could be an interesting meeting depending on how their,
How the election goes.
We have,
how item
we
1A
have,
is polling.
you have a meeting on the 7th?
You've got your joint meeting with Will County Commissioners, that's the,
Well, that's what
all of
it's
you.
on
That's on
here.
the 7th.
Yeah, that's on the 7th.
And I'm bringing the dessert Thursday night just so that, I don't know if y'all saw the memo.
Just to make Ivan look good.
We have to make, we have to bring our own dessert, so
I didn't know.
I'm bringing the dessert.
She volunteered.
Thank you.
When is this, where is
So
it?
we have to bring dinner too?
No, right?
No,
I'll be there.
I,
I don't think so.
I'm not gonna go.
Egan I,
You
Windsor.
want back?
To cancel my plans.
Wait,
What?
That's-
Oh, that's the 7th, yeah.
is that the egg and I we're doing this?
Yes, this is on first.
Oh,
Yes, that's a big.
It's an election day
They're
kickoff.
picking up, but I'll confirm.
So I guess I'll take that
It's
20th off my
November
calendar. That must have been a previous something
Yeah, it
date
must have
they
been because
thought.
it's not on our joint calendars
Okay.
that you have with me, so I don't see that anywhere. I just have the backlots, the Brinkmans meeting at 2.
You probably just wanted to meet
On the
with
20th.
Conway again on Friday for lunch.
Is the November 7th and Egg Night, is that just with Windsor or is Severance joining us?
It's just with Windsor.
Oh,
As
okay.
far as I know, I understood from her that they wanted to have separate time just with Windsor.
Do we have agendas at those usually or not?
We usually have an agenda.
We do?
Last,
We usually have.
we usually have an agenda. I have not followed
Can you
it,
put
but I
that,
can do that.
streetlight at Crossroads and
Oh.
13 on it?
Stop, Jim.
Over 12 county.
Yes, so Thursday night is your Weld County Town County dinner, right?
Yes.
You got Christie, Cindy, Ken, and Paul going to that. And that's usually without an agenda. That's just a
Right.
go and eat Christie's good dessert and hear what everybody's doing.
Is it every town is bringing a dessert? Or
Yeah.
the county's doing the dinner?
Yes. That's something new this year. I
Cheap
think.
and
Yeah,
out
so
on
they
us?
didn't charge
This is the first time,
municipal elected officials to attend, but anybody
First-
else had to.
first time they were gonna charge for staff.
Yeah, they were gonna charge for staff to go, so all of you going are.
Have they charged for us previously?
It's like, but, and it's been nominal, like $15 a person
They
or
charge you for
something like
staff?
that.
Weld County.
Yeah.
Not us, but staff.
They would have charged staff.
They changed it.
If we want to bring Kelly, we got to pay for Kelly.
Right, and I'm not going.
So there you go.
Well, and
I've got people up there.
I have a 20-year reunion of a charter school that I was a principal of, so that night, that's why I'm not
No.
attending that one.
And speaking of county, you also then, we received word today, I believe, December 18th, which is a town board work session, is when Larimer County wants to do theirs. Now, there is an agenda for that one. That's gonna be up at the ranch, if you remember, you've done that one before. And managers go to that one, that's paid by Larimer County. So I would suggest you do not do a work session that night, and go to that.
Yep.
I agree.
Okay.
So we'll put that
On the
Put it your
18th?
calendars.
on the 18th.
Of December.
Yep.
Do you have time?
It will be.
5 to 9 is
Yeah,
it?
5 to 9, dinner served at 5:30, meeting at 6.
I'll wait for the invite from Patty.
Yeah, I want
It'll come.
official.
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 We don't hear from.
I just don't want to mess it up on.
I know, I know.
And then it shows up like 3 times
Yeah,
on the
they-
Oh
calendar.
my gosh, I thought I already did accept.
It's duplicated.
Francis Hallnutz, trust
Now,
me.
it has Paul attending the chamber dinner, but he's not attending.
Yeah, I'm not, or the zone meeting on the 24th.
Okay, I'll take him off the chamber. I thought you could, never mind, sorry.
But I did,
You
I have a
did.
trip next
Okay.
week.
Not a problem.
I mean, if you're not opposed to it, I can phone in. I mean, I'm gonna be en route to the airport, but I'll be able to listen in at least
Oh,
if
for
you
the
want.
code?
On
You want to
next
phone
Tuesday.
into the chamber dinner too?
No.
I'm like,
No.
you wanna go into the
No.
chamber dinner?
No.
This is weird.
I've already phoned in last Wednesday.
A rubbery.
I already phoned in.
How's the check?
Order another drink.
Alright, I will remove you from those 2 items.
That's all I got. I can't remember, where are we with UTVs? I wrote that down to are we supposed to be writing something up and bringing it back to this group?
Kim and Chief are working on that.
Okay. Metro District, anything further on that one?
You and I are meeting on either
Yeah.
Thursday or Friday to
Yeah.
talk about the ideas that Carolyn has presented to me.
Oh, okay.
So,
If we get some, go there, we're ready to put something together.
yeah, and it's really simple.
Yeah,
Couple of code amendments.
okay.
Okay.
Good. That's all I got.
Do you think the code update I have down 7 to 8:30 next Tuesday, is it gonna be about an hour and a half?
I think it's been working.
I haven't even, I don't know that. I would say yes. That's the goal.
Okay.
Like a hard stop, is that the deal?
We can make it a hard stop.
Paul, do you-
I'll participate via
Okay.
the.
Okay, I'll work with you on that.
All right.
And we're waiting for a bated breath to see what is going to be presented to you. I've not seen it yet, so. we'll see.
Well, County's gonna listen, hear our pace, gonna take that into consideration tomorrow during their agenda. So
Oh.
maybe we will have an answer by Wednesday.
Oh, that was quick. That was quick.
Pace, the CPACE financing?
The IGA even doing the IGA, they're not gonna negotiate any components of it? Or just whether they're interested?
I don't know, they asked for the document that he brought up from
Yeah,
Denver,
yeah,
and they
yeah.
were gonna, forward that to him, and so I don't know if they were maybe gonna think about, but I think generally, I think they were very receptive. I think what they might do is, even if they approve this one, they will immediately turn around and not approve any, and shut it down, so that this is the only one, so they can approve them one at a time. The state told them they can do that.
They can authorize and then unauthorized.
Correct.
I did see that.
And then those that are authorized would be grandfathered in and continue on, and,
Yeah.
yeah. So,
And my last thing is, some of you commented, we have the communication circulated about the email for the impact fee work session November 6th. So if you can, give me your comment if there's anything different on this by tomorrow, if that's possible, and then we'd like to get it out by Wednesday. If there's ready to
I
go.
didn't respond, but I had no objection, so.
Okay.
I thought it looked really good.
That's all I got.
Something early for home.